My mother chose my abusive ex. Over me, I had her committed. She's lying, Your Honor. My daughter has always been dramatic and vindictive. Marcus would never hurt a fly. Those were the words my own mother spoke into the microphone at the witness stand, looking directly at me with cold, dismissive eyes. My name is Rebecca Stone, I'm 34 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant in Portland, Oregon. At that moment, sitting in that courtroom with my face still bearing the faded yellow bruises Marcus had left 3 weeks prior, I realized my mother had chosen my abuser over her own daughter. What she didn't know was that I had been recording our conversations for months, and I had her on tape admitting she knew exactly what Marcus was doing to me. The betrayal cut deeper than any of Marcus's punches ever had. But I didn't break down. I didn't scream or cry or cause a scene. I simply took out my phone, opened my voice memo app, and played the recording from 2 weeks earlier where she said, "I know Marcus hits you, honey, but maybe if you tried harder to keep him happy, he wouldn't get so frustrated." The judge's expression changed instantly. By the end of that day, my mother was declared mentally incompetent, and I became her legal guardian. Now I decide where she lives, and let me tell you, karma has a funny way of coming full circle. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story really begins 3 years ago, when I thought I had finally found someone who understood me. I met Marcus Yates at a coffee shop near my office. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. As a forensic accountant, I'm used to people's eyes glazing over when I explain what I do. But Marcus asked intelligent questions about financial investigations and white-collar crime. He was a construction supervisor, he said, and appreciated attention to detail. We talked for 2 hours that first day. My mother, Carol Stone, adored him from the beginning. At 67, she had been widowed for 8 years and constantly worried about me being alone. "He's so handsome and polite," she would gush after our family dinners. "And he actually listens when you talk about your job." She wasn't wrong about that part. Marcus did listen, very carefully, to everything I said about my work, my salary, my savings account, and my investment portfolio. The first time Marcus hit me, it was 6 months into our relationship. He had moved into my downtown condo the month before, claiming his lease had fallen through. The slap came out of nowhere during an argument about his unemployment. He had been between jobs for 2 months. I was so shocked that I just stood there, touching my cheek. He immediately crumbled into tears, begging forgiveness, swearing it would never happen again. Like an idiot, I believed him. When I called my mother that night, voice shaking as I told her what happened, her response should have been my first warning. "Oh, honey, you probably just caught him at a bad time. Men get frustrated when they can't provide. Maybe you could be more supportive instead of constantly bringing up money." I felt like I had been slapped twice in one day. Things escalated from there. Marcus would explode over minor things. Dinner being too cold, me working late, phone calls, with friends he deemed too long. Each time my mother found excuses for him. "He's under a lot of stress," or "You do tend to be very focused on work, Rebecca. Maybe try paying him more attention." The financial manipulation started subtly. Marcus suggested I add him to my checking account for emergencies. When I hesitated, he got angry, accusing me of not trusting him. My mother, who he had confided in during one of their frequent phone calls, called me immediately. "Rebecca, the poor man is trying to build a life with you, and you're treating him like a stranger. No wonder he's frustrated." That's when something clicked in my analytical mind. I started documenting everything. As a forensic accountant, I know the value of evidence. I began recording conversations with both Marcus and my mother on my phone. I photographed every bruise with timestamps. I saved every text message. What I discovered was more disturbing than I had imagined. Marcus wasn't just abusive. He was calculated. Through my professional contacts, I ran a background check and discovered he had done this before. 3 previous relationships with women in finance or accounting. Each had ended with the women filing restraining orders, and in 2 cases, he had managed to steal significant amounts of money before disappearing. But this time he had an accomplice, my own mother. On October 15th, 2023, at 3:47 p.m., I recorded a conversation that changed everything. I had called my mother to tell her about Marcus's latest episode. He had shoved me into a wall so hard, I cracked a rib. Instead of concern, she sighed heavily and said, "Rebecca, I know Marcus gets physical sometimes, but you have to understand. He's trying to build a future with you. He told me he wants to start a business, and with your financial skills and resources, you two could be very successful. Maybe if you stopped being so stubborn about the money and just helped him get started, he wouldn't get so frustrated with you." I nearly dropped the phone. Mom, are you seriously telling me to give money to someone who breaks my ribs? Don't be so dramatic. It was probably an accident. Marcus loves you, but love requires sacrifice and compromise. He's trying to better himself, and you're holding him back with your selfish attitude. That's when she said the words that sealed her fate. Look, I know Marcus hits you sometimes, honey, but maybe if you tried harder to keep him happy, he wouldn't get so frustrated. Marriage is about supporting your husband, even when it's difficult. I thanked her for her honesty and ended the call. Then I sat in my office and planned their destruction with the same methodical precision I used to unravel complex financial crimes. My first step was to dig deeper into Marcus's background. What I found was a goldmine of evidence. He had outstanding warrants in 2 states, unpaid child support totaling $34,672, and a pattern of targeting women in financial professions. I also discovered something interesting about his relationship with my mother. He had been visiting her regularly when I wasn't around, sometimes staying for hours. I hired a private investigator, Sarah Kim, who specialized in domestic abuse cases. Within 2 weeks, she had photographed Marcus leaving my mother's house on 3 separate occasions, always carrying bags or boxes. When I confronted my mother about these visits, she claimed he was helping with yard work, but I knew better. I had my locks changed that same day and installed hidden cameras throughout my condo. The cameras captured everything. Marcus attempting to break in, his rage when he couldn't access my apartment, and most importantly, his phone calls to my mother, strategizing about how to regain access to my finances. The old bitch said she's working on Rebecca, he said during one particularly revealing conversation. Said she'll convince her that I need money for the business. If that doesn't work, we'll have to try the pregnancy scare we talked about. Pregnancy scare? I had been on birth control our entire relationship, something Marcus knew. But apparently he and my mother had discussed faking a pregnancy to manipulate me into marriage and shared finances. The betrayal was complete. I spent 3 months building an airtight case. I documented every bruise, every threat, every manipulation tactic. I gathered financial records showing the money Marcus had already taken from other women. I had recordings of both him and my mother plotting against me. And then I discovered the most disturbing piece of the puzzle. My mother wasn't just an accomplice. She was getting paid. Marcus had promised her $25,000 once he gained access to my investment portfolio, which totaled just over $400,000. He had even paid her a $2,000 advance for her cooperation, which explained the new jewelry she'd been wearing lately. On February 3rd, 2024, Marcus violated the temporary restraining order I had obtained by showing up at my office. When the police arrived, he became violent, assaulting 2 officers in addition to attempting to assault me. This time, there were witnesses, security cameras, and no way for him to talk his way out of it. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted justice for every woman he had victimized, and I wanted my mother to face consequences for her betrayal. I called my mother and asked her to testify on my behalf at Marcus's trial. Of course, sweetheart, she said. I'll tell them exactly what I think about this whole situation. I knew she planned to undermine my testimony, just as she had undermined me for months. What she didn't know was that I was counting on it. The trial took place on March 12, 2024. Marcus was facing charges of domestic violence, stalking, violation of a restraining order, and assault on police officers. The evidence against him was overwhelming, but I knew my mother would try to paint me as an unreliable witness. She didn't disappoint. When called to testify, she took the stand with confidence, looked directly at me, and said, "She's lying, Your Honor. My daughter has always been dramatic and vindictive. Marcus would never hurt a fly. He's a good man who's trying to build a future, and she's sabotaging him out of spite." The prosecutor, District Attorney Jennifer Ward, asked my mother if she had ever seen evidence of abuse. "Never," my mother replied firmly. "Rebecca makes things up for attention. She's always been jealous of other people's happiness." That's when I handed my attorney the phone with the recorded conversation queued up. When my mother's own voice filled the courtroom saying, "I know Marcus hits you sometimes, honey, but maybe if you tried harder to keep him happy, he wouldn't get so frustrated," you could have heard a pin drop. The judge, Harold Morrison, asked to hear the recording again. Then he asked my mother if that was her voice. She stammered, claiming the recording was taken out of context, that she had been confused, that she didn't remember saying those things. But I had more recordings. Lots more. Including the one where she discussed the fake pregnancy plan and admitted to taking money from Marcus in exchange for manipulating me. Judge Morrison called for a recess and ordered a competency evaluation for my mother. The court-appointed psychiatrist found that she either suffered from severe cognitive decline that rendered her unable to distinguish truth from fiction, or she was willfully participating in a criminal conspiracy against her own daughter. Either way, she was declared mentally incompetent to manage her own affairs. As her only living relative, guardianship fell to me. Marcus was sentenced to 6 years in prison. The charges against him included domestic violence, financial fraud, for the money he had stolen from previous victims, violation of restraining orders, and conspiracy. But more importantly to me, the judge ordered him to pay restitution to all his victims, including $47,832 to cover my medical bills, therapy costs, and financial losses. My mother's situation was more complex. As her legal guardian, I had control over her finances, her living situation, and her medical care. The first thing I discovered when reviewing her accounts was that she had been planning to give Marcus access to her own life savings, nearly $150,000, as soon as he successfully gained control of my finances. I moved her into Sunset Manor, a basic assisted living facility 45 minutes outside the city. Not the luxury senior community she had always said she wanted, but a clean, safe place where she would receive adequate care. Her cable package included basic channels only, no premium networks. Her monthly allowance covered necessities and a few small comforts, but nothing extravagant. The most satisfying part was implementing the same visiting restrictions she had always insisted were for my own good when I was younger. Visitors were limited to approved family members during specific hours. Since I was her only family, and I was far too busy with work to visit more than once a month, she spent most of her time alone with her thoughts. During one of my monthly visits, about 6 months after her commitment, she begged me to move her somewhere closer to her friends, somewhere with more activities. "Rebecca, please, I'm so lonely here. I made a mistake, but I'm still your mother. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked at her the same way she had looked at me in that courtroom and said, "Mother, you made your choice when you chose Marcus over me. You chose $25,000 over your daughter's safety. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice, just like I had to live with the consequences of trusting you." "But I'm family," she protested. "So was I replied. "Family doesn't help their daughter's abuser access more money to hurt her with. Family doesn't coach domestic abusers on manipulation tactics. Family doesn't take bribes to betray their own children." The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing that my mother had never truly seen me as a person worth protecting. I was an asset to her, something to be managed and manipulated for gain. When Marcus offered her a better deal, she took it without hesitation. But there's something to be said for the clarity that comes with betrayal. I've since started a nonprofit organization that helps victims of domestic abuse navigate the financial aspects of leaving abusive relationships. My experience with forensic accounting, combined with my personal understanding of manipulation tactics, makes me uniquely qualified to help women protect their assets and rebuild their financial independence. I also met someone new, David Chen, a victim's advocate who helped me through the legal process. He's patient, kind, and has never once suggested that I should tolerate less than complete respect. Our relationship is built on mutual support rather than financial dependency. We've been together for 8 months now, and for the first time in years, I wake up without fear. Marcus will be eligible for parole in 4 years. I've already started documenting his attempts to contact me from prison, letters claiming he's changed, that he understands how wrong he was, that he wants to make amends. I save every letter as evidence for when he eventually violates his parole conditions. My mother continues to live at Sunset Manor. Her requests for transfers or increased privileges are reviewed monthly and consistently denied based on her continued refusal to take full responsibility for her actions. She maintains that she was just trying to help and that I'm punishing her for caring. Until she can acknowledge the full scope of her betrayal and the danger she put me in, her living situation remains unchanged. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about how things ended up. The answer is no. I feel sad that my mother chose money over my safety. I feel sad that it took me so long to recognize the patterns of abuse and manipulation. But I don't feel guilty for protecting myself or for ensuring that both my abuser and his accomplice faced consequences for their actions. The truth is, some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. When someone who claims to love you actively works to put you in danger for personal gain, they've revealed who they truly are. My mother didn't make a mistake. She made a calculated choice to prioritize her own financial benefit over her daughter's physical safety. That's not confusion or poor judgment. That's a fundamental moral failure. I've learned that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about people who protect you, support you, and want you to thrive. My chosen family now includes Sarah, the private investigator who believed me when no one else would, David, who shows me what healthy love looks like, and the women in my support group who understand the particular pain of family betrayal. As for karma, well, sometimes karma needs a little help from someone with access to legal databases, court records, and an understanding of how to build an airtight case. Marcus thought he was targeting another easy victim, a woman isolated from her support system by his manipulation and her mother's collaboration. Instead, he encountered someone who knew exactly how to document his crimes and present them in a way that would ensure consequences. My mother thought she was gaming the system, playing both sides to maximize her benefit. Instead, she ended up confined to a basic care facility, dependent on the daughter she betrayed for every comfort beyond her basic needs. The beautiful irony is that both of them created their own downfall through their greed and arrogance. If Marcus had simply been a regular abusive boyfriend, I might have eventually left him and moved on. But his elaborate financial schemes and manipulation tactics gave me the evidence I needed to ensure he faced serious legal consequences. If my mother had simply been unsupportive or in denial, I might have eventually forgiven her and tried to rebuild our relationship. But her active collaboration with my abuser, her acceptance of payment for her betrayal, and her willingness to testify against me in court made forgiveness impossible and legal guardianship necessary. They both underestimated me because they saw only what they wanted to see. A victim to be exploited rather than a forensic accountant with the skills and resources to fight back. That mistake cost them everything. Today I live in a new condo with David, surrounded by people who genuinely care about my well-being. I have full control over my finances, my safety, and my future. My relationship with my mother exists only as a legal obligation discharged through monthly guardianship duties. The last recording I have of her voice is from that courtroom, telling a judge that I was lying about being abused. I keep it as a reminder that some people will reveal their true nature when given the opportunity, and it's important to believe them when they do. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who were supposed to protect us. But sometimes, if you're very careful and very patient, you can make sure that their choices have consequences. Justice isn't always swift, but it can be thorough. My mother chose my abusive ex over me. Now she gets to live with that choice, in exactly the circumstances that choice has earned her for the rest of her natural life. And honestly, I sleep better at night knowing that both of them are exactly where they belong.